How are y'all doing?
All right.
Good, good. Glad to be with you. Thank you for standing for the office. I appreciate that, and on behalf of the over 600 folks that were in Salt Lake City, I bring you greetings from the 226th General Assembly, and also on behalf of Reverend Tony Larson, who's the co-moderator with me. He is currently, in fact, I just saw the picture on Facebook, at Presbytery of Lake Erie. And apparently he preached up a good word because someone took a picture. So that's what I'm going to believe. It has truly been an honor to serve alongside him and to be with you in all the various places and spaces, and to see friends and faces that I had not seen before, and people that I've met, which also means my memory is going to be shot. I'm not going to remember anyone, but please make me remember you when I meet you again. I'm feeling comfortable. So I don't really know if this is a sermon or if this is just a message and a conversation. I have no clue what it is. Y'all just go with me. Is that all right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm not even going to read the scripture, in that I think you're very familiar with it, right? Lazarus died. Jesus said, get up. He came out. End of story. If you really want to go back and read it, please, by all means, read the sacred text and find out what it actually says, because there are some really good nuggets there. But I believe this group of scholarly folks are very well aware of what that text talks about, right? At the end of the story, Lazarus is alive. So he lives. So there we have it. That makes the story. But it also informs us on the things that we get to do. And so there's a lot in that story I want to unpack for us in these few moments that we have together. So if y'all will just hang with me, those of you online, you can take a nap. I don't think they can see you. So it's okay. Sorry about that, Mr. Moderator. But I do want to share that with you. Tony and I, when we had the opportunity to stand, we chose this campaign. I don't even know if you call it a campaign. I don't know what it was. Anyway, we chose to be on a journey to stand. We are both from South Carolina, and we were both traveling clearly way across the country to Utah in order to stand for this role. And in the process of us doing that, we decided to use a car as our image, or the thing that we would use that would get people's attention, to make us memorable and all that good stuff, right? And so the C stood for communication, the A stood for alignment with God's will, and the R was for relationships, to build relationships. And so that's what Tony and I stood on. That was what we were going to stand. Well, then lo and behold, because we did take that stand, we prevailed. And now we're still on a journey, only this time it's a journey to serve. So we still stand on that same thing, because if you're going to serve, you probably need to be in communication with the people you're serving. Right, that seems to make a lot of sense. And because we are believers in Jesus Christ, you probably want to align yourself with God's will. I'm just saying. Because some folks, well, you know. And the real deal is to build relationships that are long-standing, so that you have that opportunity to serve alongside and with not only each other, but in capacities and places and spaces where that's necessary. And so if you're going to live into hope, which was the theme from the last General Assembly, and if you're going to create hope in community, which is your current theme, did I get it right? I did. Okay, good. Yes. That means I'm reading well. But I suggest that you recognize that we do this together, that this is a collective thing, that this isn't an individualistic thing, but it's collective. And so out of that, we can ask the question, well, then how does the church live? Which was a question that came through conversation. I don't even remember how the question came up, but we were responsible for answering it as Tony and I took this stand. And so we responded with the word live, meaning to love. So the L was for love, and so you love ourselves, we love our neighbors, we love what we've been called to do, we just love. And there are many ways to love, and so you pick yours. You don't have to do it the same way as someone else, right? If your love is to provide blankets for babies, great, do that, while someone else might provide beer for a Presbytery meeting. It's fine. It's the same thing. It's an act of love, right? And then the I stood for involved, and so you get involved with activities of the church, get involved with what God is calling us to do, and then what motivates us will draw us closer to God. So if we're involved in it and we recognize that it is God who placed us there, then it gives us a little more understanding as to why we're doing what we're doing. And then the V is to acknowledge that there will be victory, right? Victory in celebrating what has already happened in our lives. And of course, there's victory in Jesus, right? So you automatically get a win because you're doing this for Jesus. Now, if you're doing it for you, you might not get a win. Does that make sense? When you do it for yourself, you might not get a win. But if you're doing it for Jesus, there's a win. Somewhere in there, there's a win. And finally, the E was to encourage. And that is to encourage those who come behind you. If you do not encourage those who follow you, then we fail as leaders to continue the work that has been given to us to do. So if you are doing whatever you're doing, always train your replacement. And that is the hardest statement for Presbyterians to ever understand. Because we think when we get something and it's ours to do that we're supposed to do it forever. And we're good at doing it forever, except we're not going to be here forever. And then when we leave, so does all of that we put in place. So that's why you always train your replacement. That is a personal goal of mine. I want to be able to sit back in a rocking chair and do what my great-grandmother did, said, see what I taught that baby? That's my goal in life, to train my replacement. So if we look at all of that, this journey to stand that morphed into a journey to serve with the idea of living or to live, then I need to look at these characters from this text and see what happened in their lives, because this seems to tell a story about eventually coming to life. Martha took the first journey to stand. When she heard Jesus was coming, she went and met him. She communicated that she thought Jesus had come too late and had taken too long to arrive. And Jesus reminded her that he is the resurrection and the life, aligning her with God's will, with the will of God. Then she relied on their long-lasting relationship because she agreed with Jesus's claim, but was still disappointed with the timing of it all. And how often do we think that God's timing does not align with the timing we set aside? Have you ever set your watch to God and hope God is going to answer in your time? And let me go on and tell you, it doesn't work. I was supposed to be married about 30 years ago. It ain't happened yet. I told God, I said, this is what we're going to do. And God was like, you're right, kid. And it didn't happen yet. But there's hope. There's hope. There's hope. It is not over for me yet. And if y'all got anybody want to fill out an application. No, anyway. But the deal is this: how often do we really think God's timing does not align with the timing we set aside? And how many times have we neglected to see the glory of God because we had intended for a situation to be the way we wanted it to be? Jesus was trying to tell them, look, you're going to see the glory of God, but that was not the timing wasn't right according to this one. How many times have we neglected to see God at work in a situation because we were too upset that it didn't work the way we had planned? These are just questions to ponder. You have your own answers, but sometimes in our lives, God would let some stuff die so we can be on a journey to serve. Martha, that was Martha. Mary took the second journey to stand. There was clear communication between she and her sister. Martha told her privately that Jesus was calling for her. And Mary got up quickly, was followed by those who were there consoling her. They found Jesus, knelt at Jesus' feet, and Mary communicated in the same like manner. I think sisters have a tendency to sound the same sometimes. But she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." The alignment to God's will was shown in Jesus' reaction. God is compassionate and loving, and so we see Jesus cry. This moment in the story reveals the hearts of those that are nearby, because those who were watching, they were like, "What? What just happened?" This moment displays their relationships. Those who were watching nearby even noted the fact that Jesus could perform miracles like giving sight to the blind, and surely Jesus could have kept this man from dying. I mean, a lot of people usually have opinions about how stuff is supposed to go when they're not even in the midst of it. Isn't it strange that people outside of the situation always seem to have the solution to your problem? Isn't it interesting that people who see you going through something can always talk about how the situation could have been different? These same folks with questions and concern fail to note how they could be a part of the journey to serve. And so we get to Lazarus. He takes the third journey to stand. Jesus gets to the tomb. It was a cave. A stone was lying there. Jesus communicates by asking the stone to be removed. Martha speaks up about the fact that there might be a strong odor or a stench. Martha says, "Well, it's going to stink." Jesus was not concerned about the stinky smell that would take place. Jesus had to remind her, smell or no smell, that she would see the glory of God. Friends, there are going to be some situations in your life in this presbytery that will be a stinking mess. Turn your nose up now, because it will happen. But the way your faith should be set up is that you ought to know that eventually you will be able to see the glory of God. We may have to uncover some harsh truths about ourselves or even others, but the fact remains that we should see the glory of God. And Jesus communicates that the stink really doesn't matter. God will be glorified. Can you ever think about that? This is a stinky mess, but God's going to be glorified. I said that getting off the airplane. It was raining. I said, here I am in all this rain. This is a stinky mess, but Lord, I'm going to glorify you. Jesus aligns all who could hear with the will of God by praying. And see, Jesus is real strategic here. Jesus prays out loud. Jesus prayed out loud so everybody could hear him pray. And his prayer was not a plea asking God to perform a miracle. It was not a prayer that mourned the loss of Jesus' friend. It was not a woe is me prayer saying, "Oh Lord, why us? Why me? Why does this have to happen?" That wasn't a prayer at all. Jesus' prayer was a prayer of understanding that the glory of God would be revealed. Jesus' prayer was a prayer of thanksgiving, since those who were standing right there would see the glory of God. Jesus can offer this prayer because of the relationship that Jesus had with God. In the prayer, Jesus says, "I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe you sent me." Jesus was praying, but was really telling all them folks off. Because apparently y'all don't think I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to pray this prayer so y'all can believe I got this. So that leaves all of us to go on a journey to stand and watch how it morphs into a journey to serve. The communication is found when Jesus calls for Lazarus to come out. The communication was quite clear. Jesus did not ask Lazarus to come out. "Would you like to come out now?" He did not imply by talking to everyone else, oh, I think he might rise from the dead and come to us, yay. That's not what happened. Jesus spoke with conviction and power and communicated well, which is what I want to encourage you to do as you do the new thing that God is calling you to do. Communicated well. Tell everybody the story. Write the vision. Make it plain. Put it out there, because if you don't, nobody will ever know. The alignment with God's will is that Lazarus does indeed come out of the grave, still fully bound with strips of cloth. We see the power of God raise the dead. That may happen in the places where you are if you speak up about the things you're doing. You might get to see some folks raise up that normally don't come and raise up in places and spaces where you are. And then relationships are encouraged by Jesus, because after Lazarus comes out with both his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, Jesus gives instructions. But this is where I want you to hear this, because this is vital to the whole piece. Jesus gives instructions to those who are standing nearby and watching. If you go back and read that text, it says, Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Lazarus will be ready for his journey to serve as soon as he is unbound. Jesus wasn't talking to Lazarus saying, be unbound. No, he turned to the community and said, be unbound. You take the grave clothes off. You unbind him. You find what's necessary to make the transformation in his life, to make the change that's necessary. You become responsible for that. You are the them that Jesus is talking about right here. But nobody gets that part, because everybody's all shocked and surprised. Look, a dead man is alive. Oh my goodness. And that's what happens when people come to our churches and our congregations. We get so shocked that God called them to us, forgetting that we're supposed to take the grave clothes off. But instead we spend so much time awing and oohing over their arrival that we forget to do what Jesus actually said. So I want to encourage you, take the grave clothes off. In your community, where you are, in your church, in your area, take the grave clothes off. Be responsible for taking the grave clothes off. When people come to you, help take the grave clothes off. They're not coming to you fully alive. They're not coming to you full of love and involved and having some victory and being encouraged. They're coming to you to live. And that means you have to take the grave clothes off. But that's if you're willing to do what Jesus said. So I encourage you. I empower you to take the grave clothes off, to do the very thing that Christ commanded. So tonight, or somehow in this, we're going to show our opportunity to take the grave clothes off, because I have strips of, well, they're not actually cloth, but they're the reminder of the strips that had Lazarus bound. And what I want you to do is write on them what you find in your community, in your church, in your area, that is something that has died and needs to be unbound. And I want you to write it as a prayer. And then we're going to weave it into the fact that we are a community, because we as a community are trying really, really, really hard to create hope in community. And we'll do it through art. So your prayers on these strips of cloth that are things that need to be unbound will be written and kept somewhere, I don't know where, but as a reminder that as a community woven together, we'll be able to take the grave clothes off. So I encourage you in that way. You ready? Yeah, let's do that. So for the next minute and a half or so, write on this strip a prayer acknowledging that which needs to be removed. It can be personal. It can be for the congregation. It could be for your worshiping community. It can be for your neighborhood. It can be for whatever it is. And then what we'll do with these is weave them into our posters that will allow us to have an opportunity to see what it looks like to be community. So before you leave today with your prayer on your slip, there are going to be some posters that have little cuts in them, and you take your prayer as you are praying and you merely weave it in and out. That would be nice. You are kind. Thank you very much. Perfect. And once you've done that, we will create, at the conclusion of all of this, we will have created an opportunity to see how we are woven together as a community, so that we can live into this creative space of hope that God has called us to. I do want to encourage you also in this way. When Jesus spoke to the community to take the grave clothes off, there aren't any other instructions in that scripture after that. There's nothing that tells us how. Doesn't tell us when, doesn't tell us why. There's nothing in the scripture after that. How we create community for ourselves is based on the gifts and the offerings of those who participate. You may very well take your strip and never put it in community. And all that says is that you're not willing to see the glory of God. So I encourage you. These will be in the tables, I think, where you registered. So when you are finished with them and at an appropriate time, when all is well, just include yours in there. And then what I encourage the staff to do from this presbytery is to hang these somewhere where they're visible. And that as you see them, you pray. You don't have to know the details. Most folks pray in silence because they're not talking to us anyway. They're talking to God. So pray about it so that eventually, in due time, we'll all see the glory of God. May God bless you and keep you, and thank you for having me with you. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about that.